The Triforce and the Sacred Flames are perhaps the most influential divine relics in the lore of the Zelda franchise. In our previous video of this series on the Force, we concluded that the Light Force is the embodiment of Hylia's power, or her life force, which leaves us wondering how the Force connects to the Triforce and the Sacred Flames. In this theory, we will uncover just that. My name is Andy, and welcome to Zeldom. If you haven't watched the previous two videos of this series, I highly recommend you go watch those first, as I will be referencing information in some of my propositions from those videos later on. I would also like to give a quick shout out to a couple of members of our community, Remum95 and Noctero. Sorry if I'm pronouncing those incorrectly. About halfway through writing the script for this theory, I felt like I was lacking some details to keep the video interesting, so I reached out to the community, and these two provided some amazing insights which I was able to stitch into the theory. Thank you two so much for contributing to the video. To begin to understand how important the Force is to the divine entities such as the Triforce and Sacred Flames, we will need to analyze the nature of the Force. What we've established in previous videos is that the Force dwells in all living things, but not all life has the same amount of Force. However, we have not discussed a few other details that complicates our understanding of it. In Spirit Tracks, the Lokomo known as Anjean tells Link and Zelda that happiness and gratitude create energy. Well, I am deeply grateful to both of you for all your help. I cannot help you directly, but I can at least give you this Force Gem. Here, Anjean is saying that when positive emotions such as happiness and gratitude become so strong, they create a physical embodiment of energy, which in this era are Force Gems. It seems probable that this energy is the Force we've been talking about, which is reinforced by the sage Carbon, who says, "Every living being possesses an energy. When a person's heart is especially happy or grateful, his energy levels become particularly strong." Skyward Sword also has a very similar item known as gratitude crystals, which form when people become exceedingly happy or grateful. With this clarification that this energy is in every living being, I think it's safe to assume that emotions such as gratitude and happiness allow mortals to use their force to create energy in the form of Force Gems and gratitude crystals. Since even mere mortals are capable of producing energy in physical objects from the relatively small amounts of force they possess, I think this makes it even more likely that the Light Force and Triforce, both bearing similar physical appearances to Force Gems, are similar manifestations of the Force possessed by the goddesses. However, before we jump to conclusions just based on this one fact, I think we need to explore even more properties of the Force. First, I think we will have to transition into the topic of the Sacred Flames. Despite playing a huge role in Skyward Sword by gradually forging the Goddess Sword into the Master Sword, very little is actually known about the Sacred Flames. Fortunately, the Hyrule Historia offers relatively more reliable information about Skyward Sword since the book was inspired by the release of the game. On page 75 reads the following: Link continued his task of tempering the Goddess Sword in the sacred flames of the Golden Goddesses. Imbued with the immense, sacred power of the Force, the Goddess Sword was transformed into the Master Sword. This is clear proof that the Sacred Flames must be the essence of the Force, because otherwise they would not be able to imbue the Goddess Sword with it. It's pretty obvious now that the Sacred Flames are made of pure force, but this would be a pretty shallow analysis if we stopped here, so I say let's keep going. When the three golden goddesses, Farore, Nayru, and Din, created the world, they each contributed different traits to the universe. Din terraformed the land, Nayru bestowed wisdom to the inhabitants and formed the laws of nature, and Farore created all life. Once they were finished, they departed from the world they created, and each of them left behind a remnant of their power, forming the Triforce. Anyone who's familiar with Zelda knows that the three virtues of the Triforce are courage, wisdom, and power. Uncoincidentally, each of the Sacred Flames bear the names of one of the Golden Goddesses. With each Sacred Flame the Goddess Sword is imbued with, the Goddess Sword inherited a unique power. Farore's flame increased the length of the blade and made it sharper, causing it to inflict more damage. Nayru's flame enhanced the power of Fi, the spirit of the sword. The actual in-game mechanic simply provides more dowsing options, which is pretty insignificant. However, I believe in terms of the lore, I think Fi's empowerment is just as important as the other inherent powers. And finally, Din's flame provided the sword the divine power to repel evil, completing its transformation into the Master Sword. Upon inspection, each of these upgrades corresponds with the virtues of the Triforce. The blade becoming sharper and bolder corresponds with courage. Expanding Fi's power, the consciousness of the sword, corresponds to it obtaining wisdom. And most obviously, the power to repel evil corresponds to power. With all these parallels, I think it's probable that the Golden Goddesses collectively created the Force to contain the elements of power, wisdom, and courage, not just the Triforce. I think this explains how the Triforce determines whose heart is balanced and is worthy of wielding its power. We've already established that everyone has some amount of Force in them, but not every life form has the same amount. With this idea that the Force is also split into 3 elements, we can logically conclude that every unique person or life form would also have varying proportions of each element of the Force in them. In order to wield the full Triforce, the one who touches it must have the 3 elements of the Force in balance, which must be very rare and the reason why the full Triforce has only been used a couple of times in the history of Hyrule. In Skyward Sword, the goddess Hylia created the Silent Realm trials for the purpose of tempering her chosen hero's spirit so he may wield the full Triforce, meaning she was capable to create a balance in the Force of her chosen hero, which coincidentally turned out to be Link. Impa also tells Link that he must purify his sword in the sacred flames, presenting the idea that they are some pure divine energy. Given that the Force is able to physically manifest itself in ways such as gratitude crystals and Force gems, and the sacred flames imbued the goddess sword with the 3 elements of the Force, I can conclude that the sacred flames are the pure essences of the Force. But if the sacred flames are the pure essences of the Force, then wouldn't that make them the ultimate power instead of the Triforce? Well, in a way, yes, but hear me out. The Force is a divine energy or power that the Golden Goddesses created for life. In the universe, though, we have seen many instances of magic, with magic even being a mechanic in a number of the games. I think that what we know as magic in the Zelda franchise is simply the ability to manipulate the Force. The reason we don't always perceive the Force as being the most powerful entity is because the living creatures only have a very limited capacity to manipulate it and perform magic. We have seen some instances of people being able to manipulate the Force in perverted ways, such as the Dark Interlopers for Twilight Princess, but clearly even they only had a limited capacity to manipulate the Force, because even with their great power, they still sought tirelessly after the Triforce. The Great Fairies also likely used their great amounts of life force to produce magic as seen throughout many of the games. So sure, the Force could be the greatest power in the world of Hyrule, but then what does that make the Triforce? I think that the Triforce was created as the ultimate authority over the entirety of the Force as a gift to the inhabitants of Hyrule. With this sacred gift, one with a pure heart and balance in the Force could manipulate the Force to create a more ideal world. But of course, in order for this light side of the Force to exist, there must also be a dark side. If you enjoyed this theory, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications so you'll know when we upload the next theory in this series, where we will explore Zelda's dark side of the Force. Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to have you with us next time.